Well, here we are again.
One more time.
Yep, lethal as always. What are we going to talk about today, Matt?
Well, today this one was your idea, and it was a fascinating, a fascinating idea. As soon as you told me, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The importance, or wait, no, let me. I'm gonna let you say it.
What I thought, what I thought would be a wonderful idea would be to examine the authenticity in role-playing video games, and how exactly that manifests for each individual. And in this case, being us two, as we're the only ones present present at the moment. And I just wanted to go through the line of our personal anecdotal history as to what we felt in terms of the video games we've had the opportunity to be exposed to as we've grown up. And
Of which there are many.
exactly, and
Yeah.
because of that, we have a lot of masks that we've played before. I think we touched on this very lightly in our first video game
Oh,
topic.
love of video game,
The
yeah.
love of video games, and now we're getting into deeper whys, as opposed to just wondering about the higher substrate of the love of the situation. Now we're thinking about what exactly is it about the narrative aspects of being a character or pretending to create and then morph a character. I thought that was that. That was
Yeah,
fun.
no, it's a really good idea, especially because between us two, we have kind of, as far as I understand it, we have a pretty different, not solely different, but we have a pretty different experience when it comes to role playing and like definitively role playing, if we're gonna define it as either embodying a character
Okay.
that you're gonna create with your own story, or stepping into the shoes of another character.
Well, not to get too bogged down, then let's try to see if we can give our own personal definitions of what role playing means, so that way we can branch out from there. So there's
Okay.
no unnecessary indiscretion between us as to what we
Right.
mean with each
Because
other.
it's important to I mean, there's kind of a distinction there, right? As far as
I mean, role playing is a loaded word, really.
Right.
It's a word that can genuinely mean anything you want, depending on your sophistication in, maybe being an actor, or just being the kind of person that likes to read books or play video games from a narrative perspective, as opposed to a more gameplay driven mentality. So how about go ahead and start and give me your definition of what it means to play a role playing video game.
Well, see, this is very, yeah. I've always had trouble with this because I don't really do it. You know, most video games don't really allow you the opportunity, but the ones that do, the bigger ones, the sandbox ones, the ones that allow you a lot more customization in your actions and your character. For the most part, I'm like a min-maxing kind of guy. I just like to abuse the game to the point where I'm the best and I'm the god in the video game. But when I think of role playing, I always think of. See, I've never really thought of it in this way. That's like sort of embodying the shoes of a character, like becoming Geralt of Rivia, or becoming Shepard. You know, I've never really felt that strong of a connection to that kind of thing. The kind of role playing that I've always enjoyed, when I have enjoyed it, which again is not very often, but when I do, it's the kind where you create your own little story and you have your own little, you know, take on it. You were saying earlier about what was it, Fallout, where you would take a character through to a certain point, like have them accomplish this thing. No, it was Skyrim. And then that's like, well, I role played that character in that way. You know, that's like you made your own story. That's what I've always thought of as role playing. But I never really played a lot of JRPGs where they give you the opportunity to do the opposite, to like really, because like I mean, the Wild Hunt is pretty new,
Yeah.
and that kind of, I don't know, I've just never felt as in tune with that.
Okay. Let me see if I can steel man your argument then for a second,
All
so
right.
I can see if I totally got it. you for the most part like to just use in a narrative driven game the character that they give you, say Geralt of Rivia, Commander Shepard, Link, and or in any sort of situation, in order to be able to then use them as a vehicle to increase the stats as given in the game to then become the best, the Ubermensch of that.
Like my god.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The Ubermensch of that game, which sounds unbelievably fun. That sounds
it
like an
does.
awesome thing to do. Yeah, I thought I told you about how in Fallout 3, that's what I like to do. Like you can totally glitch that game if you have all of the DLCs because you can totally make it so you can have all 10 all specials in 10
for your
and then,
attributes.
yeah, and all 100 skill points and everything, so you can genuinely walk around like a god upon the capital wasteland. And but you can only ever do that one time.
Well, yeah, or two.
Yeah.
But these, it's just since we're on the topic, Elder Scrolls games. This is my only exception to this rule, really, where I feel really comfortable creating a role play where it's not as much about the min-maxing, it's more about bending the rules of the game, which Bethesda's games are all like that. Even without mods, they all have ways that you can bend and tweak them and mess with them. And I always think of my Oblivion, Elder Scrolls 4 playthrough as 4 or 5 games down the line or whatever it was, becoming and actually really trying to be a master wizard, and like not just do so in the confines of the game, but like in sort of an outside way. And I'll tell you this story because it's my favorite story, and that's where I was able to use a staff and a spell to create a copy of myself in the game. And then I had to lure the copy of myself outside of the cave where I performed this. And then I had to use this other spell. And then I was able to bring the copy of myself back to my wizard's tower and place him and stand guard at my wizard's tower. And
so then you made your doppelganger become your guard,
yes,
your personal guard?
Yes,
Damn.
yes. And that's my favorite. And
most certainly sounds like you stretched the limits of what the game was allowing you to do.
I don't think you're supposed to be able to. The clone hated me. Yeah.
It was probably like a Meeseeks, like existence is pain.
He just had to stand there all day in an empty wizard's tower. But that's what I wanted, I wanted myself there. I don't know what that. That's just my favorite experience from actually doing like a role play story that I set out to do. Not even really a story, more like an anecdote, but it was.
That's all we really have when it comes to video games, is just your own personal anecdote as to when the character really shined through. Because, for example, when you're playing through Skyrim, it is a lot of just walking around from place to place trying to figure out the next fun thing, but there are some moments of serendipity that are just turn out hilarious. The AI, as stupid as it may be, it uses its stupidity for the most comedic reasons possible sometimes. Watching mammoths just take down wizards that think they can bring them down with a fire spell is hilarious. Just watching, especially because they do that silly animation where the mammoth throws you up and you just watch them just fly up in the air.
Yeah, or the giants that smash in city guards or whomever comes near and like, boop! I love that. Is it a bug or a feature? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's Bethesda's unspoken credo, really.
Yeah, they have this, I don't have it pulled up here, but they have this, it was in the Daggerfall manual, this statement about the save and replay method of gaming.
Ooh, the old save scum.
Yeah, we would call it save scumming, which is where you, in some games, or most games, not like if you die, but there are some games where if you just save and play out a situation and then reload and continue to do that, your game ends up looking like, if you were to read it like a story, it ends up looking like a series of lucky breaks and perfect hits, and and it kind of, I guess in their eyes, sort of takes away from the story aspect. What they said was, if you play out these situations and and just go with the flow of your flaws and mistakes, you'll discover things in the game that you otherwise wouldn't have, which I don't think is something that's very prevalent anymore.
Right. If they were kind of engendering the concept that perhaps what you think is a bad move now might potentially yield better things in the future.
Right.
Kind of like how in Oblivion, when you kill somebody innocently, even if it's a mistake, they do that whole, it's like mysterious eyes, I've seen what you've done.
Yes, somebody saw you murder that person,
Yeah.
and now you're gonna go to jail the next time you go into town, or...
No, you're gonna get a visit from the Dark Brotherhood.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
And like you'd think that, oh shit, I'm trying to play a good person.
Oh,
and it's like
sure,
I'm gonna say reload my game and not do that.
Not
And then
kill that person.
if you do that forever, it could genuinely come to pass that you might never come to find
Discover
that
the
the
Dark
Brotherhood is a thing in the game.
Yeah.
If you play over virtuous, because sometimes the game even blames you for murders that aren't even really your fault. Like it's kind of like moral luck problems, but they're
Yeah.
like, you like. And it's like someone saw you do that, just to kind of like get the ball rolling in that sense for it. And if you fall into this concept that you have to be a certain way, you could potentially come to, much like in real life, miss opportunities that might yield from bad experiences.
Yes. But then there's the flip. Did you play XCOM?
Oh, I played a ton of XCOM.
You played XCOM?
Yeah.
So have you ever played a game where you named all your characters?
Yeah.
Like you personally, and you like you are this guy. And then have any of those games ever panned out?
No, none, none. I am a gigantic safe scum when it comes to XCOM.
Oh my god!
I
See,
have-
there are just some games though that are like that. That are.
Oh
like,
yeah, no, don't take what I just said as defensive save. I mean, like not reloading your save.
Right.
But if the developer already has that concept in mind, in the back, to the point that they would even bother mentioning that in their instruction manual, it means that they're thinking about it from the mold of we're trying to expand this in every direction possible, right? As opposed to XCOM, where you don't get a hidden mission or anything like that from allowing a ton of people to die. It's
Yeah.
just
It just makes it worse. And
worse, yeah.
hard and unnecessarily hard. I think is what it
Yeah, because the game doesn't dial back just
Yeah.
because you only have recruits and rookies
right.
now.
Yeah. In my mind, it kind of encourages you to save scum.
To a certain degree, yeah.
Right.
Unless you can do, what is it, Iron Man?
Iron Man, where it's one run through. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you.
No, I don't think I really enjoy the even as much as I don't role play. I don't often role play in video. I really like the openness of the Elder Scrolls series, especially in Morrowind and Oblivion. Yeah, they kind of toned it down in Skyrim. They made it more because back in like Morrowind, without even knowing a lot about the game, you had to make a character that was specialized. Otherwise you just weren't going to go very far.
Yeah.
You weren't going to get things done. Like you had to focus on what you wanted to do because that was the way the game was built.
It's true. I mean, the thing that I always disliked about that particular game is just the scaling of the level of the enemies, because although that works for a very long time, it eventually begins to feel a bit futile because and I mean, and perhaps this is actually to a credit of the game in my detriment, just being lazy, because it's like you do have to get very creative as time goes by and the enemies get much harder and harder. It's like,
well, that's like it was what you touched on earlier in the Fallout thing. Like they have this sort of inert flaw about them where if you want to make the perfect character, if you want to make something that's going to kind of break that soft ceiling, that glass ceiling of the game where it's sort of flawed in its makeup, then you have to have all this pre-existing knowledge, and then you have to kind of take a little bit of fun out of the game while you do things in a specific order and in a specific way and in a very calculated method in order to shatter that glass ceiling and have all your attributes at 100, because you can do that in Oblivion, you can do that in Morrowind too. It just takes a lot of fucking time, and some people would say it's not worth it. I think it's fun.
right, yeah, because you're like the min-maxing situation.
And maybe that in itself is kind of a form of role play,
Yeah, because you're playing God.
Right.
Well, I mean, we were trying to play the Ascendant God, like
Yeah.
slowly but surely from the prisoner to eventually being the most powerful wizard on top of the
Yeah.
tower.
I was just some dude on a boat. or I was just some guy who was about to get his head chopped off. Yeah, I really like, and again, that's probably the only reason I've ever sort of role played in those games. Bethesda's open world attitude, it just seeps through the entire game, all of their games, and that's why I think they're so good for that kind of that opportunity to role play. But
Yeah, like roleplay in the sense of trying to create your own character.
yeah,
Because, for example, in like in Dragon Age, you roleplay to a certain degree as well because you get to create the character, and then but the character is like filling a hole in the story that the story needs filling, as opposed to like in the Elder Scrolls, wherein like it's kind of a more fluid situation.
yeah,
Wherein really the world could come to pass that you never help anybody.
Yeah.
You just go off and do your own thing. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna be somebody that collects plants, and
Yeah,
I'm
I
gonna be
just
an
collect
alchemist.
plants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just another person, guy.
I
Yeah.
run away from trolls.
Yeah.
I don't fight trolls.
Yeah, that's my credo. I never fight a troll.
Yeah, whereas like Dragon Age is like, no, you do this.
You do this, yeah. The
storyline.
darkspawn must be taken down. Like there is a genuine, and that's cool because it gives the story a good locomotion. It's like like we got to move this forward because the darkspawn are coming.
Yeah.
It's really crappy.
This was really BioWare's golden age. Dragon Age, the first Dragon Age, Origins, was fantastic. What else did they make those? Oh, they made the KOTOR games.
Right.
They made the Knights of the Old Republic games,
yeah.
which were fantastic.
Oh my
role-playing
gosh, yeah.
games.
I mean, if there still is anything to be salvaged from everything that's happened to the Star Wars universe, it's Knights of the Old Republic because
Even to this day.
that lore is awesome.
I fucking bought that game because they made it backwards compatible on the Xbox One a couple months ago, and I played the dark side because
Nice,
it's the way to go.
It is. It most certainly is. When
You feel so powerful.
Yeah, my inception into that was Knights of the Old Republic 2 Sith Lords. I had never heard of that game until the day that I walked into the GameStop and I saw it on the shelf for the PC games. And fortunately, I had a beefy enough PC then to play it. And I was like, oh my god. I knew nothing about it. I was like, it doesn't matter if it's the second one, I'm going to play it no matter what.
Yes.
And they did the good graces of starting you off as the exile and you no longer having to worry about anything extra about like a past situation that might have happened. And I couldn't help but become evil in that game. Like the dark side was far too tempting all of the time, and Kreia did way too much of like adding the not moral ambiguity, because she told you what she thought was the right and wrong thing to do, but she just really you could really feel like those the philosophical inklings of the writers seep through, because they were just like, don't be a slave, like just don't be following credos that somebody's just dictating to you, whether Jedi or Sith. And I think that game was probably, and this is a sad thing to say, the last hard morality game that I've played in a long time, because in that game, not only were the manifestations of your actions reverberated through your ship, they reverberated through every planet that you went through. Kreia would show you actual visions of what would happen when you were stingy and abusive and too kind and not too altruistic. And sometimes the game even fucks with the fact that it doesn't even give you a choice. Like, the world will have to go one way or the other, and it might come to the same conclusion at the end, even with your potential movements forth, which I think was a very good, humbling experience in terms of what the game is showcasing. It's like, no matter how powerful you get, Kreia's always there, being like that memento mori kind of thought. We're like, you will also die. It's like, you can't be thinking that, and falling into the same bad mentalities that Darth Nihilus and what was the name of the guy with the charred body? Darth.
It's been like 13 years.
Oh, I
since
know.
that game.
I know,
I
but
don't remember their names. I remember Nihilus now that you say it.
yeah. But how they were both just the entire embodiments of how you can just go too far off the rails, because you're gonna have to look it up. Look up Knights of the Old Republic 2 and tell me his name, because it's going to bother me, because I'm going to keep referencing this over and over again. But I'm gonna at least start with Darth Nihilus and the fact that he just failed to become the genuine void. It was just the nothing but the eating of everything until there was nothing left, and never giving back is kind of the biggest thing of them. and it's like they're just representations of the worst possible outcome. And the Jedi Council, on the far other end, were exactly the representation of the hypocrisies of thinking that you're already a good guy just because of the creeds that you follow. They fell into the notion of the kind of like self-serving, of being like, we're the Jedi, we know what's best. And every single time that the young Jedi would protest that they're not fighting in the Mandalorian Wars or they're not helping out enough, they would inevitably create the defecting dark Jedi who would then become the new Sith Lords of the next regime. It would just the Jedi Council was essentially a factory for Sith Lords.
Yeah.
On the back end.
Well, we see that on the big screen too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's Anakin's story.
Yeah, but it was better on Knights of the Old Republic.
That's true. How did they do that?
I think it's
I
because
think it's because George Lucas was.
that's possible, but at the same time, I think it's just because that kind of story can only be told through the actions of the person that's absorbing it. That's why it was very impactful how the game gave you a whole list of both dialogue options, action options.
Yeah, here's the one of the things that's really struck me about just talking about this now is Knights of the Old Republic, in particular, in the early BioWare games, Dragon Age Origins, they really, as story driven as they were, they went out of their way to make those distinctions reality in your choices. They went out of their way to like really affect the environment, you know. They did as best as they could to make it feel that every choice you made was important, and it forced you to think more about them and to really ask yourself, what would I do and how important is it, even if you're trying to role play as an evil person. Yeah, they really pushed that shit on you, and they did a good job of it.
Right. Darth Sion, that was the guy's name with
the burnt guy?
With the burnt up guy. Yeah, like the only thing holding him together was his hatred of the Force.
Yeah.
And of life, essentially. And he's like, I'm gonna keep coming back until everybody's dead.
Yeah, that guy was scary as shit. He was like he was Nemesis basically. He just kept coming back. Resident Evil.
I don't
Stars.
think I played that.
Never played.
No.
Same thing, same fucking thing. Kind of I feel like video games have kind of lost that. There was that big boost in the later 2000s of games that would have morality features where it was like you made good choices or you made bad choices and the story would progress as such.
Yeah, Fable 1 and 2 as prime examples of that push toward trying to contextualize and visualize morality to like in a fun way, because you know it was cartoony the way Fable did it, but it was still very powerful to be able to see the fact that your character would start growing like charred and like they'd start growing horns, and
flies.
Flies would come through on them and stuff. Like it would be really funny because it's like, why wouldn't anybody like allow you like want to converse with you, but at the same time you also grow powerful enough that it makes sense that no one would try to mess with you at the same time. Everyone's kind of like, oh.
Yeah, that game in particular, and the BioWare games, the choices that they would offer up to you, like the things that you could do, like in Fable, there was this character, Thunder, right?
Yes.
Daughter Whisper. And
his sister.
His sister, yeah. And you could kill them both.
Yeah.
Through a series of really evil decisions. I'll never forget that. So there's probably something really important about... Because let me ask you this. When you play through a game like that has a morality system like that, and you do the bad side intentionally, do you feel bad?
I sometimes do, yeah. Even just watching it happen.
Right.
Because I'm recalling right now when I played Fable 1, which was, my opinion, the best one, because it was so concise.
Yeah.
It was like 10 hours with the lost chapters of good story.
Yeah.
And the arena scene, when you pick to kill Whisper when Jack of Blades asks you. It's like, God damn, like that's pretty intense. You know, it's like it makes sense why you would come out of there looking really, really gnarly right afterward, because that was like almost like a Voldemortian kind of like breaking of the soul, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good reference. breaking the soul into pieces.
Yeah, essentially, and it allows the horns to rip out more. To the point that you actually, if you think about it within the context of that game, you actually become such an evil force to really contend with the force of Jack of Blades. It's like, no, like I am the evil force. It's like, it doesn't matter if you become a dragon, doesn't matter if you do anything. It's like,
they give you that option at the end of the game to basically become
Jack of Blades. Yeah, I always hated that option though. I always threw the mask in the fire because it's like, if I'm gonna be evil, I'm gonna be my evil.
I'm the evil. Yeah, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Nobody even speak his name anymore. It's all me.
Exactly. Jack of who? And you know, and they might have actually kept that promise, because in Fable 2 they never mentioned him. Fable 3 they never mentioned him. Jack of Blades is like he never existed in the timeline anymore. It is kind of weird that sticking to the Fable mythos, how they got further and further away from like that more ethereal kind of mentality. It's like Jack of Blades was supposed to be like the spirit that was like inhabiting the mask, that like
Majora.
Yeah, essentially, and slowly but surely the problems became more industrialized and modern and boring. That's kind of my problem.
It's cool because it's like, I mean, yeah, in a way it's kind of lame, because I agree in that opinion that I think the whole Western RPG fantasy type feel that they had in the first one was way more diluted as it went on. But at the same time, it's because it's about a sort of real place, right? It's about London, right? Or
Albion. Yeah, and Albion does grow. Yeah, it's true.
And it becomes, I don't know, it's sort of, that's interesting, but because it kind of evolves.
Even the goblins do, actually.
Into a modern sense of the same story that was started in the first one. And again, I liked wearing armor, you know. They took that away. They took a lot of things away as they went. And it didn't.
That's why Fable 2 mechanically was the best one.
Probably, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Fable 3 was just weird and nobody really liked it.
It was really strange. And because you could, in Fable 2, you could really go for that min-max situation when it came to money. Oh, man. And
that was the best part about the game.
The game actually gave you, and this is one of the things I love the most, if anybody here is thinking about developing a video game, just give nods to achievements that people do. It really helps. Because, for example, in Fable 2, when you buy every piece of property in the game actually acknowledges the fact that you are now the genuine landowner of everything around. It isn't just, you filled in the chart, you know, like...
Don't they name you king?
Yeah, they do. They name you king, and you get to live in the castle.
Yes. Oh my god.
Yeah, that's wonderful. You
Fuck, like, role-playing. Just give me that.
Yeah.
Just give me that feeling, that warm, like, oh, I'm the king. They said it was.
They said it was. Yeah, no one's contesting.
Castle.
No one's contesting my rule.
Oh.
I'm getting rent from everybody, and if you want, you can be fair with everyone. You can make it so everyone lives for free if you want it.
Rent free. After a while, you're like, I don't
got no problem. Yeah, exactly. My coffers are full, baby.
I'm gonna be the greatest king there ever was.
Exactly. Save your money, all right? Because we're gonna work in a libertarian situation where everyone has to pay for their own streets, all right?
It's all your guys' problem. Yeah. We're gonna separate you into districts.
And that's what they did in Fable 3. So that was nice. Actually, the world building of the Fable trilogy was really good. It just, I think, it degraded in quality mechanically onto Fable 3.
Yeah.
By quite a lot, but to the point that you can't really roleplay anything aside from being that prince.
Yeah, you just...
Or the princess.
Well, it forces you, yeah. That's, I think, maybe a really good example of kind of bad role-playing, where unless you have played that game before and you know how to abuse it, at the end of the game, it's going to be sad in one way or another. That's the way they designed it, was that either like you're a really benevolent person
you off guard,
who eventually has their kingdom destroyed, or you're a very malevolent leader who makes a bunch of people suffer, but in the end it saves the kingdom.
You actually have something, a scrap to come back to.
This is probably right around the time in video games where people that were doing these kind of morality meters really kind of lost the point, and it's sort of the whole people just stopped using them. People it maybe it even highlighted the inequity in the you know, because you start to ask yourself, like, would a bad person do that? Is that a bad thing to do? And who are you to tell me that that's a bad thing to do?
Yeah. What you're saying is that moral relativism started seeping into
Yeah.
video game writing.
It became something in the pop culture enough that people started talking about it and started putting it into art.
It makes perfect sense. The fact that you kind of fall into that unfortunate mentality of being like, I don't really know how to go about contextualizing what an evil action really is, to the point to not make it cartoony.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing that people also want to avoid, is that you want to create a choice that seems realistic enough, but doesn't seem like, like a dastardly deed where you're like twirling your mustache kind of thing.
Right.
But or you're like an angel, like, like, oh, and but then at the same time, how you get, once again, it's just the gray, and the gray is no fun. I want to be able to
Blow up Megaton.
yeah, blow up Megaton again. Yeah, blow up something. Allow me to be able to, especially because you're already in the high position of being the video game writer. Of, once again, if anybody's developing a video game or thinking about doing so in their future, think about this. It's like you have the high reins of being the god and creator of the situation to the nth degree of how many people you have in your team if you're the writer. You have the potential of showcasing to us what you think a good person is. You can begin to espouse your ethic, or at least make fun of the ethics you think are not right. If you can't really espouse your ethic to a better degree, at least showcase the phonies.
I think BioShock is a really good example of that with Ayn Rand and objectivism in general. Yeah, but go on. Yeah.
I think that's a very, very good way of thinking about it, because they're not glorifying objectivism in any sort of way when showcasing how it can produce some beauties in BioShock. It can create the
vast rapture. The city itself is
for a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah.
It can happen, but it'll devolve very quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's fine. It's like no one's arguing the merits of whether somebody should have told us about how silly objectivism to its extreme degree can be, right? It's like we applaud the fact that we have a video game we can look to and be like, hey, if you want to see the downfalls of taking that view to too far of an extreme, here it is. Thank you. What is it, 2K? Who created it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so, right?
Yeah, it was 2K, yeah.
And thank you for taking the time to actually have the bravery to be like, this is the philosophy, this is what we think is right, and this is what we think is wrong. And
well, it was always, they didn't force that down your throat at all. You know what I mean? They just let you experience it and take that away from the game. It was almost like the game didn't care how you felt about it, but they were going to show you anyway.
Exactly. As opposed to kind of just being really tepid about the whole situation, kind of like the issue that I felt in Fallout 4, and in the sense that you're already constrained in the character department, because you're already this person's parent, and you know that in the back of the character's head, they're always thinking about this. So because of that, you can't ever stray too far, and the game never allows you to stray too far. There is no mission that allows you to say, I'm going to be a shit person and stop caring about my family altogether, which could have easily been a thing. And it wouldn't have even deviated the game, because it would then have allowed you to, once you got to the Institute by some miracle, if you kept playing the game, be like, father would have been seeing you and be like, oh shit, man, you don't even care once you came out. And then it would have been kind of like, oh, like,
So this is more opportunities for storytelling.
And all it would have taken is a couple extra lines of script, or just hoping that the writer wants to be able to flesh out the story much further than it being a gatekeeper for the next action sequence or whatever it may be. And I think there's just a lot of missed opportunities nowadays, especially, and it really hurts me, because you would think that with the better technology, it would be even easier to then put smaller things into, like, put smaller and deeper things into the game, as opposed to trying to fill them in with one gigantic thing that's kind of bland for the
Yeah.
most part. Like, that's the issue that I have narratively with No Man's Sky, is the fact that if you were to go on the internet and go on YouTube and find all of the, like, an abridged version of playing No Man's Sky that took none of the resource gathering, nothing like that. You just went from Atlas place to Atlas place and anomaly to anomaly and read what they said and what happened. It's actually a pretty interesting story.
Yeah.
It's a pretty interesting conceptualization of you being a knowing participant in the simulation that you live in, right?
Yeah.
It's a very cool thing, but
Yeah.
it's bogged down by literally a knee-high blandness to my mind. That has its peaks, that has its nice peaks, but deep valleys when it comes to monotony,
Yeah.
like being monotonous and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the problem that I think Minecraft sort of has that same problem, and games like
And I can forgive Minecraft, because Minecraft didn't start with the desire to tell any sort of story.
right, right. They didn't give a fuck. No, no, there's no story. You fight a dragon eventually.
Yeah, it's all yeah, and what the Ender Dragon really does that really add anything
Right.
to the
No,
game, really?
not at all. It's the same thing with like Stardew Valley, or other micromanaging games like that. Well, Stardew Valley is a little bit narrative driven, but not really. It's a fun game to grind away at. Yeah, No Man's Sky definitely. You hit a fun ball every time you play it. You know, you could pop it in and play it for a couple weeks, couple hours a day, and have a blast. But at some point, it's just not. There's you can feel whatever it is that's lacking,
Oh yeah,
and it's
and it's lacking in every system the same way every time.
yeah.
But at the same time, that game has no real ending to it, no matter what. So
Right. It never intended to. Yeah.
it's not even a sandbox; it's a desert. It's a genuine desert that goes on forever. As opposed to, say, for all its many faults and flaws and warts, Mafia 3 was a very strong narrative-driven game that I just finished playing not too long ago. That it it just took you by the hand, and although the middle sections were filled with some good level of repetitiveness in terms of the contextual mechanics that you do them in, I thought that at least the narrative aspect of it made sense, because I listened to everything that happened, and the like the rackets that you take down, it makes perfect sense why it would be in that particular side of town. They really put thought into where the prostitution ring would happen, where the waste management rackets would be at, and just having that extra little bit of contextualization to the world made New Bordeaux feel real and like a place that I was actually affecting as I was going through as Lincoln Clay. And because of the fact that it always knew, the game kind of like does that enclosure kind of thing, like in the same way the enclosing thing on you as you go deeper and deeper into the game. That you feel it pushing you toward the ending of the game.
Yeah.
As you start closing in all the rackets and you have all of the resources that you need, you're like, go do the last mission, and then that's it. Congratulations. If you want to come back and do a couple choices different, do it again. But the game just kind of ushers you out the door, and that's pretty much it. And they give you the good old fashioned kind of like New Vegas and Fallout 3, like not slides but little cutscenes that explain what the repercussions and reverberations of your actions ultimately ended up being. Once again, developers, just little nods to achievements. If you
Yes.
decided to make a quest, it doesn't hurt to just add a little thing that said, then this happened to this people because you chose to do this, this particular thing. You think it's stupid, but it really touches people, knowing.
This is the thing that the Witcher gets right, and apparently Mafia.
It takes like an hour for that game to end because there's so many people that you have to go through in order to be able to figure out what happened to them, and you care because there's no way that you spent the at least 50 hours to get to the end of that game in order and not care about any of the characters. You have to care at least about some of them, or else you're a weird person that plays video games in a masochistic way.
You should talk to
and I'm
some-
sorry, and I'm
if you
sorry,
do
yeah,
that. Don't-
yeah.
don't,
Video games are not meant to be a toxic outlet.
Yeah.
Yeah, or inlet actually, yeah, because you're keep the toxicity out.
Be a good girl.
Yeah.
Don't be a shitbag.
Yeah, because you can be quite the shitbag.
Yeah, yeah. That The Witcher. I can't really think of another one in very recent history. Another video game that was. This is like the rare side of the thing that you've had experience with in JRPGs, and I've had very little experience with because I don't play very many JRPGs. But that idea of filling another character's shoes and really walking them out, really.
Kingdom Hearts. When I was
it's another one I never
yeah.
played.
Oh man, that was one that although Sora is kind of a wimpy character to begin with, the continual growth from Kingdom Hearts 1, Kingdom Hearts 2, and Chain of Memories, and hopefully maybe one day if we all pray hard enough at the same time, Kingdom Hearts 3 will come out.
I've heard a lot of people are kind of butthurt about that.
Yeah, I mean it's been about a decade. People have most certainly died waiting for that game to come out.
It's so sad.
But that game, watching the growth of the characters, watching Riku go through his little spiel of going from darkness to sort of okayness, that's all very, very touching. It's something that having the extra pressure of I as the player to then have to create that character would dilute to a certain degree, and it's to cast one stone at the Elder Scrolls. That is always the issue with them, is the fact that they're like, Bethesda walks in and drops this gigantic chest in front of you and be like, all right, buddy, you can be all of these things. Especially how you mentioned in Oblivion, you can you can really, they even give you like the whole like warrior, stealth mage, like they have a whole list of things you can be, and then and they push you out the door and they tell you to go be that.
Yeah, go focus on that.
Yeah, and that's wonderful, but at the same time, I mean, just picturing that analogy, you can see how disheveled and how unbelievably clunky that kind of mentality can be, because you're not really meant to be anywhere. You're always filling in. You're not filling in a void. You're just kind of like going in as a ghost, and you're like, oh, he came and he did that thing, and then but the world can't change too much from it because you were never really supposed to even be here.
Right.
And as opposed to a lot of JRPGs that I've played, Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age is one I'm replaying right now on the PS4, and that's one of my favorite ones because although in the realm of customizing your character and where you can go and stuff, aside from allowing whenever you go out of the way of the story, it is very narrative driven. You're going through the motions of the situation, but the story really has something to say. And if you stop and really listen to what the story has to say, it is a wonderful story about, man taking away the reins of power from the gods. It's like, it's just some crazy stuff.
That's my favorite story.
It's awesome. Yeah.
That's the reason I like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood so much, because that's that whole story in a nutshell.
Yeah.
But yeah, that
the reins of history back in the hands of man.
Yeah. That's some powerful shit. That's cool. I really enjoy the and I'm super grateful or thankful for the kind of resurgence in that type of storytelling that we're starting to see. Like The Witcher 3 just blew me the fuck away as far as like what a narrative driven story could be and what it could accomplish, how it could make you feel. I'm not much into the JRPGs, but I just hope that we start to see more and more games like that, and I hope Bethesda, whenever Elder Scrolls 6 comes out, can incorporate some of that into their game plan.
For sure, because if anything, if we're gonna think about The Witcher, it kind of has an Eastern role playing game narrative with the Western RPG Ludo narrative where you get to pick you get to go and like actually find better armors. It isn't just like in the store and you're like stuck in these like quantitative like
Right.
situations where you have to do certain things or else you're screwed because you're like not in the proper level.
Right.
and
Like
things.
this guy gets spears. You got your spear. That's what you get.
Yeah, that's it's pretty crazy. It is pretty crazy because, well, one of the more newer ways that I've found in the past couple of years that the gaming industry has found to be able to really implement a more nuanced way to role play has been what I have found in the Dark Souls in the Souls series. Really, I know you haven't really gotten the chance to play many of them.
I don't hate myself enough. To
Yeah, no, I'm a huge believer in self-flagellation, so I stand ready whenever the Dark Soul appears on me. And what I really like about it in terms of the character, my authenticity as a character is the fact that it gives me such a wide berth of variety in terms of the kind of armors I can use, the non-armors I can use, halberd, sword, shield, whatever.
It's very intricate, isn't it?
It
And
very much is.
like you can build certain loadouts or whatever that are like this guy is like a fucking tank and he's never gonna take damage no matter how hard. It's like that nuanced that you can.
Exactly. Yeah, you can make it be so it can all be a circumstantial situation and you can switch your things around, or you can be just a steadfast person that is just like, this is what I'm wearing, this is what my person likes to wear.
Okay.
And we're just gonna run through it however it comes to be. You decide the level of like hardcoreness in relation
Okay.
to your build and stuff like that, because sometimes your build that you're playing throughout the whole game could make certain parts of the game just easy. You cheese through it very simply, but then it can just break you down. For example, if you're playing a tanky character in one area where it's nothing but melees, then it's cakewalk all day, but then you have people shooting lightning at you from far away, and then your shield can only do so much against that, and there's hardly any shields in the game that give you full magic absorption damage as opposed to stamina and health reduction. So there is no one thing that will allow you. This is especially true in number one. I felt as number two and number three go on, I don't know. The builds become even more classified, and it's like you can always do it, but I just thought that the first one was just the best at doing so in relation to how new and vague the story was, because this was really a situation where the story, like the main story, it kind of felt like it had already happened. Like you're only playing like a long epilogue of a bad situation, because you're in a dead world. You're just trying to figure yourself out, but you're for some reason alive and keep coming back to life, and you want to figure out what's this driving thing that keeps bringing you back to life, which is at the same time a cool paradox of the character's own motivation of wanting to continuously do it. It's like, what's bringing you back to life and keeping you alive? You. Like, the game can genuinely stop at any time if you just decide that you don't want to play anymore. And it all depends on what exactly will be a satisfactory answer for you. It's like maybe for some people, and for a lot of people that find these kind of games too difficult, the beginning is just enough of an answer. But like, nope, this place looks like it sucks, and I'm just gonna leave it to suck.
Yeah, I'm one of those people. I don't often quit a video game, but I quit Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2. I tried to start them both, and I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't,
What is it that turned you off about it?
I guess it was just it was just, maybe it was my mood at the time. I don't think it was. I think it was the really harsh defeat, the really really harsh sense of defeat, and the lacking in forgiveness, sort of, that the game it was one of those few instances you don't get that a lot anymore. I think that was more. I think that you used to see that more in older games, like on the Nintendo, but like they were very hard on you. You had to do things perfectly, And if
Well,
you
they were
didn't-
really trying to stretch out a 45-minute
Yeah.
game as long as they could.
yeah, and sell it for $40 and convince people to buy it. But yeah, that's it's I don't know. That's probably just that.
I'm gonna have to contend what you're saying there, just because I know you've been playing a lot of Enter the Gungeon, which is a game that is very very hard. I, as a person that enjoys hard games,
Yeah.
I find I have to put that game down after a couple tries, just because it is just very disheartening.
It does beat you down.
Yeah, because at least
beats
with
you
Dark
down.
Souls, especially Dark Souls 1, before they implemented the weird stuff in number 2, um, you know, it's like you got to keep all your armor. Aside from being cursed, you could just come back and retry the whole situation again. It wasn't even as punishing as having to restart the dungeon all over again.
Yeah.
So I would say that perhaps there was something in your temperament that might have changed that could potentially allow you to see something like that all the way through now.
I think you. As much as I don't want to say it, I think you might be right.
There we go. See, we created a convert right in the middle of our conversation.
Yeah, it's just a really strong point. I totally. The connection now is clear to me, but between the two, I really do enjoy the Enter the Gungeon, because the thing about it is that
And Dark Souls is just Enter the Dark Souls, because
that's what it is,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah. I just think like if I'm putting enough time into it, knowing that I might not ever beat it. I believe that truly, that I might not ever beat Enter the Gungeon, but I get a little better every time.
of course.
And
Whenever I see you play, you ballet around those bullets sometimes really wonderfully, to the point that I feel like I do in Dark Souls 1, because I've replayed it so many times. The furthest I ever got was New Game +6, and I just stopped.
holy shit.
Yeah, and what was really
That
cool,
rad.
what was really cool about that run actually was the fact that I was able to go from the very beginning of the game all the way up until the area where the knights and whoever's listening knows, in Anne Orlando they shoot you with these giant arrows and they throw you off this tiny little ledge, and that's the first time I died. It like I was able to go through the whole game like on like just a one
Just
life.
like the Juggernaut.
Yeah, because I knew everything that had to happen. I knew where they all were. It was awesome, you know, like actually seeing the choreography occur
It
as
was
you
like, at that point, it's easy. You're like, oh, this is bitch shit. Like, get
Yeah.
the fuck out of here, little skeleton man.
Exactly, especially because you get to level up in that game, and the levels stay with you even after you die. So it just keeps incrementing higher and higher. And although there is a hard cap as to the things that you can do, the hard cap is huge. Like, you can get really strong. Because the first time I played that game, because I am a gigantic masochist, I started it with a deprived. I was like loincloth, and the first item that I found was a hammer with a nail through it, and I was like, these are my only two weapons throughout the whole game. And that's the way I played it, and it was amazing. There was just something about being able to tell that story that just made that story be worth living.
Yeah. To be able to.
Kind of
that's
a
like my
Candide
wizard
kind of
story
situation. Yeah, exactly.
about making the clone. There was like, that was what made it special, and I want to tell people about that, as nerdy as it is, because to me it sounds like a cool
Exactly,
story.
because another liver in that world can understand. Somebody else who's lived there can understand what you're talking about and
They know.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is what we're trying to do with these conversations as often as we possibly can, as the topics come into our brains, you know. But I think with that we're gonna be able to call it short for now, and I hope
we got
that
pretty into it.
yeah, for sure, right.
I think.
I can never really tell, but you know, we just try to do our best. That's all we can ever really hope for. And I hope that everybody has a good day and good night, and keep subscribing and telling people if you like this stuff, you know. And if not, well, I hope the air keeps hearing us over and over again.
That's always great. You know, well, yeah, I enjoy speaking to the air as much as I do to regular people.
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe even a little more. All right.
But seriously, yeah, as always, thanks for listening.
Yep.
Um,
So later days, man.
it's been good.